Welcome to the Queen City King. This is your host, King Daddy, here with you on a beautiful yet blustery, windy and cold Wednesday afternoon. We can be found on Twitter at RealKDShow and on Instagram at Real_KD Show. And we also have a Facebook page, The King Daddy Show. And we also have email, which is kdshow1984@gmail.com. Feel free to contact us on any form of social media that you please with any questions, concerns, ideas, thoughts. Cuss me out, do whatever you want to do. I welcome everything. Bring it on. So, I was out and about earlier today, went to the grocery store. First thing I saw when I got out of my car was this dude smoking a cigarette, standing on the sidewalk, ringing a bell for the Salvation Army. Beautiful example there. So I walk on past him. He's ringing the bell. People are dropping money in the tin. I don't know what that money goes to. I don't know that much about the Salvation Army other than they run some shelters and thrift stores. But it made me think, I ride around everywhere. You can't go anywhere at night now that people's yards aren't lit up, that you can see from space with Christmas lights. We just recently had the Black Friday sale where people go shopping in the name of cheap Christmas presents as they try to kill each other in public. And that just reminded me not only of the state of the world that we live in, but the state of the church that Christmas is designed for to begin with. Christmas is a designation, supposedly, of the birthday of Jesus. Now, we're all not stupid. We know that Jesus was not technically born on December 25th. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. Nobody knows. But that's the day that the Christians have chosen to celebrate the birthday of their Lord and Savior. And that's fine. They can do whatever they want to. Do not understand it being a national holiday. But Christmas is good for the economy. Thanksgiving's good for the economy. And I don't guess that you have to be thankful or in the Christmas spirit to go out and spend money. People like to do that pretty much anyway. But what it does remind me of when I think about Christmas is the state of the church in which the holiday stems from. And I'm going to take these points one at a time, and I'm going to look at the church from my perspective as to what I see, because I do not see a welcoming place to go worship God. I do not see a comforting place to go and feel spiritual enlightenment. That is not what I see when I see the church. That is not what I think about when I think about Christmas or think about the church. So the first thing that I think about when I put the church to mind, which is very seldom, by the way, is one, blatant racism. How many times have you walked into a church and you just happen to notice that you've just entered into a room full of white people? In that particular instance, there may be a couple of black people in there, but for the most part, you have just entered into a room full of white people who are worshiping white Jesus. And if you go into a black church, such as an AME Zion, you have a room full of black people who are worshiping black people. Both these two entities of people are separated for the most part against the other group of people. They have their own way of doing things. They have their own style. They have their own form of music. They have their own form of worship. Their pastors have their own form of preaching. And it is absolutely different from something that you would see in the church of the other color. So when I think of church, I think of literal racism. Now, everybody in the world is trying to say, racism is bad. We're trying to stop racism. But if you can't stop racism on such a ground floor level as a place of worship, You're never going to stop it in the real world. They can run around out in the middle of the street carrying signs and protesting, wearing those stupid pussy hats and doing all the shit that they do all they want to in their marches. And they're never going to end racism that way, because racism is so deep within the church that they're never going to get rid of it until they figure out a way to come together before God. Another thing that I see when I look at the church is child molestation. One of the biggest stories on the news right now are the Catholic priests who have been molesting little boys for years. But that is only one small piece to the pie of that. I was watching the local news here in Charlotte the other morning, and a man was arrested for harming and molesting a child at a church-run daycare. He was fired, and then he was arrested. But that runs rampant in the church. You hear about molestation all the time. You hear about molestation in scouting. You hear about molestation at the church. You hear about molestation at schools. And again, you're never going to stop something as serious as the problem of child molestation or child welfare and harm issues until you stop them in our religious places. Now, that's one thing. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a proponent of the Muslim faith. I'm not a Christian either. I don't want to call myself an agnostic, because I really do believe that there's a creator out there. I just don't look at that creator the way other people look at that deity. But you do not see or hear about molestation in Muslim synagogues. You do not hear about molestation in Jewish synagogues. If you do or have, email me at kdshow1984@gmail.com and tell me about it, because I've not heard it. I've not heard of any of those things, but I have heard about molestation. I have heard about child welfare issues in mainstream churches and Catholicism. It is filled with it. There is absolutely an epidemic of molesting children in the house of God. It is crazy. So if you've heard of any of those things, like I said, shoot me an email and let me know, or contact one of my social media pages and just bring that to my attention, because I would like to address it. I would like to hear about a story that you know of where that has taken place somewhere outside of the Christian faith. One of the other things that brings to mind about Christians when I think about Christmas in the church is the degree of judgment. You don't use the same Bible we use. I remember years ago hearing the debate between the New King James Version versus the King James 1611 version. And church people were literally having arguments over the translation of a Bible. By the way, the translation of a Bible that was found by men in a cave, captured by the Catholic Church, only released the 66 books that they wanted you to hear and have the rest of them locked up in a vault somewhere. But they want to argue with each other about which translation God approves of. So you have the crazy King James 1611 people versus the New King James people versus the New Revised Standard Edition people. A house against itself based on their own Bible cannot stand. The amount of people in this country now that go to church versus how many people that went to church even in the 80s when I was a teenager has diminished by a significant percentage rate. And I don't think it has so much to do with the fact that people have changed. It has to do with the fact that the church does not do what they are supposed to do. So another thing that I think about when I think of churches is they all have these whatever it is, the tax exempt status, C-103 or whatever it's called. If I'm not saying that correctly, again, feel free to correct me. But they are having tax exempt status, building new buildings, buying chandeliers, putting in fancy carpet. The preacher lives in a $300,000 house, and they're getting tax exempt status. And there are people laying in the streets that you're trying to figure out what the government is going to do for them. What is the church supposed to be doing? Are church people supposed to go to church and get themselves filled with some form of spirituality and then go hit up the Golden Corral buffet and talk about everybody at church and what they were wearing and how horrible they looked and how short Peggy Sue's skirt was, that she looked like a hooker and had on too much makeup? That is what God wants. But there are poor people and hungry people and sick people all over America. And another thing the church wants to do that drives me absolutely fucking bonkers is they want to send missionaries to foreign countries to bring Jesus to people who don't even speak English. They want to spend all this money sending these people overseas. They want to send people to Africa. We just had this one church man. Well, I'll give you two examples. The pastor that was arrested and locked up and withheld in Turkey for 2 years. The Turkish people don't want to hear about Jesus. As a matter of fact, it's against their laws to go over there and do this. The Chinese people don't like you to come over there. Bringing a Bible into China is against their rules. And even though the Bible says that you're supposed to obey the laws of the land, they continue to go into these areas where they are forbidden to be and bring their so-called gospel to people that don't even speak English and don't want to hear what they have to say, so that they can go to churches and travel around and tell their stories and take up a love offering and go home with a pocket full of money when they've really not made that much of a difference. You look at the plight of people here and you see that the church is not even doing what they're supposed to be doing in the United States of America. There are lost, hungry, sick, downtrodden, beaten, severely outcasted people right here in the United States of America that are getting ignored, and we have a church on every fucking corner. Now, I digress for a moment. Yes, we have a church on every corner. That is because if you go into some of these denominations, Baptist is real bad, some of the Assemblies of God, some of your more local, yokel, down-home, hardcore Bible-thumping churches, half the people who sit in that congregation also think that they're a preacher. So you have the regular pastor of the church, and then you have 5 or 6 yokel locals sitting out in the congregation that think they're pastors too, so they go start a church somewhere. So you have a church on every corner. Right here where I live, I can walk out my front door and I can literally take a piss on 5 churches away from my yard, and every single one of them on Sunday morning has like 10 cars in the parking lot. You can't even get the churches full, but you want to go out and you want to claim that you're a minister and you want to stand there and you want to preach to the same 10 people every Sunday. I don't understand it. I never have understood it. There has got to be something done about the plight of the churches. But yet, here in the South, we allow the churches to dictate our government. We allow the churches to dictate practically everything that we do. If the church stands against something that you want to do, it ends up getting closed. Give you a good story about that. Several years ago over in Charlotte, well, it was actually South Charlotte, or North Charlotte, South Concord. There was a bar that opened up over there called Suck Bang Blow, SBB. They have them other places. I think they have one at Myrtle Beach. And basically, suck, bang, blow, from my understanding, is a Harley-Davidson motorcycle term. It is nothing sexual, nothing dirty. It is a little funny play on words. But there's a church that opened up down the street, and they protested suck, bang, blow so hard that SBB ended up going out of business because it couldn't handle the onslaught of the so-called Christian set that was attacking them, and they ended up going out of business and losing their business. They served alcohol. They had girls who were dressed in skimpy outfits, and their name was Suck, Bang, Blow, which made the church people think of something sexual. So therefore, they made it their mission to shut them down. I just don't understand it. We have tree lightings. We have decorations up everywhere for a religious holiday in a country that is supposed to be a melting pot for the separation of church and state. Now, I'm not saying that I want the United States of America to become a Muslim nation or a Jewish nation. What I want it to be is a nation of people who believe what they want to believe and keep their damn mouth shut and keep it to themselves. Your religion is personal. Your relationship with whatever God you choose to serve is personal. So we have that pastor getting detained in Turkey for 2 years. Everybody made a big deal out of wanting to bring him home, even though he was a lawbreaker and he should have been detained. And then you have that young man who decided that he wanted to pay the fishermen to break the law, to drop him off on an island somewhere that is, by the way, forbidden by that government to access that island because they're fearful of those people, one, for their violence, and two, because they do not want to plague them with our diseases that they do not have. But this young man thought that it was so important that he go over there and bring his so-called gospel to those people that he gets these fishermen to drop him off over there on a boat, and he makes his way on the island, and guess what? He's greeted with an arrow that gets stuck into his Bible. So instead of running for his life and getting the hell out of there like a normal human being would do, he pushes forward and ends up getting killed, and now they can't even go to the island and retrieve his body. All because he was going to do something that he had no business going to do in a land where he had no business doing it. Why didn't he go to one of our downtown urban areas and minister to those people? Make a bag full of sandwiches and take it over to the middle of the poor people and sit down on the sidewalk and minister to them and tell them how Jesus is going to make their life better while they're freezing to death, sleeping on a park bench, wrapped up in a blanket that they probably stole somewhere. Why is he not doing that? But no, I'm going to go take my Bible and I'm going to jump off this boat and I'm going to go to an indigenous land of people that don't speak English, that can't understand me and I can't understand them. And I'm going to lose my life doing something that I shouldn't be doing in the first damn place. And then everybody in the church world is going to feel sorry for me and talk about how wonderful a person that I was and that I gave my life serving my God. No, you're a dead fucking idiot. You didn't give your life serving your God. Well, you did. You gave your life serving your God, which was your own pride, your own ego. You're a showboat, and you lost your life for doing something that you had no business doing. That is what makes Christmas Christmas for me. The church, who likes to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ all over the world. In America, they want to hang lights, sing carols, build churches, drive fancy cars, wear nice suits, live in big fine houses, and talk about how blessed they are, while everybody in the world gets the benefit of what they have to offer, except for the people right here at home. Here at home, they are divorcing, molesting, beating, shunning, everything except for what they're supposed to be doing. So for the Queen City King, this is King Daddy saying Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.